Let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're looking at a totally fascinating legal deconstruction of what exactly happens when a single drop of milk falls into a boiling pot of meat. We're going to dig into a highly specific text that breaks down the real-world mechanics of cooking, diffusion, and flavor. It is an incredible look at how centuries-old deductive logic applies directly to the literal physical actions we take standing right there at the stove.
Here's our agenda for this breakdown. 1. The physical action. 2. Defining continuous stirring. 3. The wrung-out principle. 4. A challenge to the core debate. 5. Proving the debate's foundation. And finally, 6. Dinner table applications.
All right, part 1, the physical action.
Let's start with a scenario I think we can all relate to, happening right there on the stovetop. Imagine you're in the kitchen cooking dinner. At T-1 minute, you've got pieces of kosher meat boiling away in a pot of gravy. Then, at T0, an accident happens. Boom. A single drop of milk falls directly into the pot and it hits a piece of meat. At T+1 minute, the cook grabs a spoon and stirs the pot. Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter? Well, everything in our legal analysis today hinges on this exact sequence of physical events, specifically the precise timing between that milk dropping in and that spoon stirring the liquid.
Before we get too deep into the weeds, we absolutely have to establish our ground rules. We need to separate the baseline Torah law from the rabbinic operational rules used to prevent a violation. The fundamental Torah law strictly prohibits cooking and eating meat and milk together. Full stop. However, what we're really analyzing here are the rabbinic laws. Think of these as the operational, almost mathematical rules for nullification. These rules dictate whether an accidental mixture, like our single stray drop of milk, completely ruins the entire pot of meat, or if the milk's volume is small enough to be legally canceled out or nullified by the surrounding food.
Moving on to Section 2, defining continuous stirring.
What's really wild here is how the exact timing of the cook's stirring dictates literally everything about the legal status of the food. We have this ancient legal compromise from a scholar named Rabbi Yudah Hanassi. He says, the statement of the rabbis appears correct in a case where one stirred the pot and covered it. Now, in this text, he's trying to resolve a massive debate about whether the pot is permitted to eat. But to actually understand his compromise, we have to figure out exactly what stirred and covered means in real life.
The text uses some incredibly strict logical deduction to figure this out. Step 1. The milk hits the first piece of meat. Now, if the cook waits even a moment to stir, that specific piece of meat absorbs the milk. So step 2 requires that stirring happens immediately and continuously. Why? Well, because if the stirring is immediate and continuous, step 3 happens instantly. The milk diffuses evenly into the boiling gravy before that first piece of meat ever has a chance to absorb it permanently. So the logical deduction is that the stirring must be continuous from beginning to end. Otherwise, that initial piece of meat would be permanently tainted. Which brings us to part 3, the wrung-out principle.
So this is the real climax of the ancient debate. What actually happens to that first piece of meat if the stirring wasn't immediate? The crucial point is this concept of being wrung out. As we define it here, it's the concept of a forbidden substance being absorbed by food and subsequently extracted or drawn out by boiling liquid. Imagine a sponge. Our drop of milk soaks into the piece of meat. Then, as the meat continues to boil in the intense heat of the gravy, the milk is literally wrung out of the meat and diffuses into the rest of the pot. The million-dollar question is, if the boiling gravy draws the milk back out, is the meat kosher again?
And, we really have to talk about flavor here, too, because it's not just about the physical drop of milk, it's about the taste it leaves behind in the meat. In this legal framework, flavor legally defines whether a mixture is prohibited or permitted. We are tracking the flavor that the milk imparts. If the milk is wrung out by the boiling gravy, does the forbidden flavor permanently remain trapped in the fibers of the meat, or is the flavor extracted right along with it? This is exactly where the two sides completely split. We can deduce that the rabbis believe delayed stirring saves the pot because they argue an item that can be wrung out is permitted once the milk diffuses. Basically, the boiling action pulls the forbidden flavor out of that first piece of meat and spreads it into the larger pot, where it just gets nullified. But the opposing view from Rabbi Yehuda says no way. He argues that an item that can be wrung out remains prohibited. For him, once that piece of meat absorbs the milk, it becomes inherently forbidden, and no amount of boiling or wringing out can reverse its status. The meat is permanently prohibited.
Section 4, a challenge to the core debate.
But hold on a second. Let's look at how this builds, because a challenger named Rav Aha steps in and attempts to shift the entire debate. He asks a truly brilliant question. What if everyone actually agrees that a wrung-out item remains prohibited? He completely challenges the premise we just established. He suggests, hey, maybe there is no argument about diffusion. Perhaps everyone fundamentally agrees that once a forbidden substance is absorbed into food, that item is irrevocably prohibited, even if it's later wrung out by the boiling gravy.
If everyone actually agrees on that, then what on earth are they fighting about? Well, he suggests the debate is actually about same-type mixtures. So what's a same-type mixture? It's when foods of identical materials are combined. Think about our pot for a second. Once that first piece of meat absorbs the milk, it transforms into a forbidden piece of meat. Now we have one forbidden piece of meat boiling in a pot surrounded by other perfectly kosher pieces of meat. They are the exact same material. Rav Aha argues the core dispute is simply whether the flavor of the now forbidden meat can be mathematically nullified by the kosher meat around it.
Part 5. Proving the debate's foundation.
Okay, so to counter this totally bold theory, a scholar named Ravina steps up with an absolutely masterful structural defense. He looks back at Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi's original compromise about stirring. Now look at the logic here. If the foundational debate is about the wrung-out principle, the compromise makes perfect sense. Immediate stirring prevents the meat from ever absorbing the milk in the first place, which completely bypasses the whole wrung-out problem. But consider the alternative. If the debate were only about same-type mixtures, the original phrasing of the compromise, which was entirely based on stirring, would be completely illogical. The physical act of stirring a pot has absolutely zero to do with the mathematical rules of nullifying pieces of identical meat. So here's the real mic drop moment. Ravina proves that the debate must fundamentally be about the wrung-out concept, based entirely on how the compromise was originally phrased. The precise phrasing of a legal compromise reveals the exact theoretical foundation of the original argument. Because the compromise specifically relies on the physical act of stirring, which controls diffusion and absorption, you literally cannot separate the physical mechanics described in the ruling from the abstract legal principles behind them.
Finally, Section 6, Dinner Table Applications. Let's bring this high-level legal logic right down to earth, into practical, everyday reality. These ancient principles of diffusion, absorption, and nullification directly dictate modern culinary rules right at your stove. Think about the practical applications. The immediate stirring of an accidental spill literally changes the legal status of the food by forcing instant diffusion. Using slotted spoons for extraction, the physics of keeping pots covered to maintain boiling pressure, understanding how flavor diffuses through different densities of food, all of these daily kitchen habits are directly informed by this exact logical framework.
And remember, all of this operates within the established rabbinic threshold that a forbidden substance must be nullified by 60 times its volume. The drop of milk has to be overpowered by 60 drops of gravy and meat. Immediate, continuous stirring is the exact physical mechanism we use to guarantee the milk meets that 1:60 ratio across the entire pot before it can permanently taint a single piece of food. Which leaves us with a pretty profound thought. How does the physical act of cooking in your kitchen today intersect with centuries of deductive legal logic? Every single time you stir a pot, you aren't just keeping the soup from burning. You are actively participating in a precise physical action that's governed by centuries of brilliant deductive reasoning about absorption, flavor, and diffusion. It definitely makes you look at a simple wooden spoon entirely differently, doesn't it?